Sandile Zungu, the man. Where did it all start for you? And where do you think, I guess, the seeds for your current role in business were sown?
Well, the truth is that I grew up as a very academically oriented person. I loved education, and at some stage, I thought I would be a teacher.
Okay.
I was a top student at school, and I was offered a scholarship by Shell, which meant I did post-matric at Hilton College just for 1 year. Then I went to UCT to do engineering, something I had never thought of. So the first 6 years of my working life was really as an engineer, doing plant engineering, projects management, and so all sorts of things related to engineering.
Talk to me about that early experience. I mean, it must be a big shock coming as you did from your background, Mlazi, to then go to a Hilton College, which and then thereafter go to UCT, especially at the time. I mean, this was a society in transition, in flux. Talk to us about that shock from one South Africa to the next.
That's a very important issue. For me, coming from a really very modest working class environment, I will never use the word from rags to riches or from poverty, because I was never in bed on an empty stomach. My parents always provided, and my parents always looked after the basics of parenting. So I owe quite a lot to them. But the fact of the matter is that when I was put at Hilton College, I suddenly realized just what a contrast from a land of many needs to a land of plenty. The quality of food we had for breakfast, for lunch, for dinners was vastly different from what I was used to. And that sharpened my contradiction. The contradiction is a part of society. Suddenly, I was in an environment where I was a tiny minority in my own country, coming from a township environment where I could not define myself outside of the majority. Everything I saw around me was black, was product of working class, and suddenly, and quite frankly, that experience has not changed. In the business environment, I'm still a minority. When I went to university, I was a minority. My kids, when I send them to school, they're a minority in private schools. We ought to change that. But the experience at Hilton College itself was brilliant. Credit to Hilton College, because even though it was deep in apartheid days, but the fact of the matter is that I never felt discriminated at all.
Would you say, were it not for the foresight of corporate citizens like the likes of Shell, who then paved, your path of opportunity at Hilton and even at UCT, that many of the people that we know as, I guess, torchbearers of black business in the post-apartheid period would not have been in the position that they're in. So were it not for that foresight on the part of many international firms who were working in South Africa, fully conscious of, the stratification of our labor market and the kind of job reservation that existed then, but who were willing to say, we're going to do things slightly differently.
If Shell had not come to the party and offered me a scholarship, I doubt I would be where I am now. Like I said, I was resigned to becoming a teacher. I had been accepted at Amanzimtoti College of Education to do the teaching qualification. And I was happy with that. I was content that I was going to give back to my community. But Shell came to the party and exposed me to a world that I did not know existed. Became an engineer, mechanical engineer, and the rest is history. So the truth is that corporate South Africa, when they act in a responsible manner and for the benefit of society, society changes. My fortunes have really and that of my family have changed in one generation. And thanks to that engineering training that I got.
Let's talk about, you touched on you being a plant engineer and the kind of work that you did then, which is vastly different to the work that you do now. Talk to me about when the engineer now becomes, I guess, how do I say it, an attentive deal maker or somebody who has a keen interest in the world of enterprise. When did that shift happen?
I completed my engineering in 4 years as set. I got very good marks overall. I was very happy, and I lived a very balanced life. I was a student, political activist. I was very active on campus in social life. I did everything that young people could do in a responsible fashion. But I was not a good engineer. The bug of plant life didn't bite me. And I had to face that reality very early in life. I said, look, you know what? I don't enjoy what I'm doing. I've qualified, but I ought to do something. And for example, I was watching the news. They'll start with general issues, crime, these political upheavals here and there. Then they'll get to economic news. They'll talk about inflation. They'll talk about a commercial rand. And I said, what the hell are they talking about? They'll talk about inflation. I said, what are they talking about? I can relate with it. I can, make sense of it. But what are the underlying drivers? And I said, I'm curious. I'm inquisitive. I want to know about this. And so my choosing MBA was, in a way, out of curiosity, but in a way it was also an escape from a world I'd got trapped into, which I was not enjoying. And thus I got exposed to merchant banking when I finished my MBA. And the investment that I made on myself by pursuing MBA and by facing the reality about what I was good at, what tickled my fancy, and acting on it immediately, it really helped me to where I am now. So it was quite a milestone achievement.
Yeah. And I guess in many ways your involvement in merchant banking really, I guess, placed the early building blocks in place for the kind of work that you do now. And I want us to talk briefly just about Zungu Investments, the early days, and what went into creating what is now, by all intents and purposes, a very diversified investment holdings company with presence in mining and energy right through to some presence in the financial services sector. Talk to us about what went into setting that up and, more importantly, the environment within which that happened.
It's very exciting. When I left MBA, I went into merchant banking. I was hired by NAIL at the time, New Africa Investments Limited, which was led by Dr. Ndato Motlana. Among its senior executives was Cyril Ramaphosa, Zwelakhe Sisulu, Dikgang Moseneke, John Tisandla. Very, very much cream de la cream of black business. Anyone wanted to be associated with those people. I wanted to work for them. And it was at the time when empowerment was beginning to make a mark and to be felt in South Africa. But at the time, people were doing deals on a first name basis. Okay, well, you know Madiba, I can cut a deal with you. I can introduce you to Minister X, or can have dinner with the president. You are relevant. I can give you 10% of my business.
So political track records are the currency in the deal making.
So someone like myself, who is a nobody, who was a non-starter, I didn't come from a family of eminent personalities. My father never spent a day in prison. I didn't come from with those kind of struggle credentials. So I could not compete. But I said, I'm going to be very patient. I'm going to make myself as a technically oriented person, as a technocrat. One day someone's going to listen and take notice of what I am. And in 2002, after spending quite some time at Harvard Business School, just honing in and sharpening my knowledge of what was happening at the time, I said, I'm going to start my business. 2002, I opened the doors to Zungu Investments Company. And I made it very clear. I will use my knowledge and I will use whatever relationships that I have in corporate South Africa, in political South Africa, just in the political economy as a whole, to leverage on the partnerships I was going to form with people who have got capital and who have got know-how, and create a win-win kind of partnership. So my first investments at Zungu Investments Company, Zico, were in the form of joint ventures with the likes of Supercare, Fidelity Services Group in security. And I proved myself as a sought-after partner, as a value-adding partner, to the extent that when those companies were now empowering themselves, they said, Zungu, we cannot look any further than you.